So both of these two layers are derivative of these layers. What that means is that I know that every piece in this layer is in the right layer. The only thing I have to do is start swapping them around. So just like with this, I'm now going to make sure that all my corners are in. And I'm looking for 2 corners that are in, at least 2. Now how do I know? How do I know that these 2 are in the right position, or if they're not, or if these 2 are in the right position? The way that we do it is because I can't do it based on color, and I can't do it based purely on shape in correlation with each other. I have to do it based on how it correlates with this bottom layer and how it fits. So I'm going to turn this around until I find 2 that line up. So turn it around, so you can see this piece here. See how this piece lines up? Is the edge piece or the corner piece here lining up? And it doesn't. This one does here, but this doesn't. So what we're seeing is that none of these, I can turn this around to see where it lines up. This lines up here, but this doesn't. So none of them seem to be, I don't have any 2 corners next to each other that are in. They're only across from each other. This one lines up here. Does this? No. So when I'm confronted with a situation where none of the corners, no 2 corners are in, I just do a random adjacent corner swap. So that's going to be 2R, and I'm going to move these 2 together just like I did with this. So that's 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R, turn the puzzle 90 degrees, 2R, UI, 2R, U, 2R. Now this is where the faith in the algorithm comes from, because it's very hard to keep track completely of what I'm doing. And because it's hard to keep track of what I'm doing, you just have to have faith that if you just follow the algorithm, it will work out. And lo and behold, you can see that I have a whole chunk in here. This corner and this corner must match. Why do they match? Because there happens to be a centerpiece, or an edge piece rather, that's in between them that fits both. Because it fits both, this happens to fit over here, so does this. I know that these 2 fit. Now let's say this edge piece was not here. Let's say it was out, and I still wouldn't know. What I can do is put it into the bottom and see that this matches and this matches. This fits flush here and this fits flush. That tells me these 2 are in, even if this edge piece wasn't here. So these are in. You can tell this one isn't and this one isn't. So that means these 2 corners must flip-flop. So these 2 corners are in. Let's once again put this into ghost position. And now we're going to do another adjacent corner swap, and that should get all the corners up here in place. So again, have faith in the algorithm. 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R, turn. And now the faith in the algorithm means not just that this will come into position, but you're not going to mess these bottom 2 up. So, where was I? Oh yeah. 2R, UI, 2R, U, 2R. And as your faith is strong, this is still fine and this is fine. Now let's see how these corners match up. So let's whip this around. And you can see this matches here, this matches here, this corner matches here, and this corner matches here. So what you have is you have all the corners in, even if the edges aren't. Just so happens this edge is in and this edge is in. So what I have to do now is I have to move the edges in with edge swaps. In this case, because this edge is in and this edge is in, this needs to go here and this needs to go here. So all I have to do at this point is an opposite edge swap, and this should be completely solved. Now this turned out easy because what would happen if these 2 are swapped? Then this would be fine. All 3 of these would be out, and I'd have to try to figure out which to swap. And it's not too hard to figure out. You can see how this is coming out. This has a nice little shelf over here. You can see that there's a space where that belongs here too. So that's not too hard to figure out. But we got a little bit lucky this time, so all I have to do is an opposite edge swap. Not an adjacent edge swap, this is already in. So we just do 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, don't get lost, 2R, 2U. And as you can see, now this whole layer is in. And I didn't do anything new. All I did was keep my wits about me with this, keep the faith in the algorithm, and just place things right. And just to be sure, I can match this down here, turn this around to match this side, hopefully, and there it is. So this is all matched here. So you can see the shape is starting to come through. All we have is this top layer. Now you can understand the pain of if I put these two layers in and it turns out that this was up here, so these were all upside down, then I'd basically have to start again, and that's a pain that you need not witness. Okay, so now the top. So the top is done the same way. First thing to do is let's look at these corners, what corners are in and what's not. Which two corners are next to each other. So let's line this up with this layer down here, and as I turn this around, bang, this matches here. This doesn't match here, and this doesn't match here, this doesn't match here. So this isn't next to where it should be. How about this guy? Let's put this where it's supposed to be. Looks like right here, and this is fine. So this matches to this layer here, this matches to this layer here, so these two corners are in, but this one doesn't, and this one doesn't. So what this tells me is these two need to flip-flop. So let's go ahead and put this into movable position and do an adjacent corner swap here, because I know these two are correct. So that's 2R U. I'm only moving the top now and the bottom. 2R UI 2R UI, and then move this one D. That's equivalent to moving both of these counterclockwise without moving this. 2R UI 2R U 2R, and let's see what we've got. Now I can tell that these are still right because this edge in the middle matches both. I turn this into position, this is fit flush, this is in, you can see this fits flush, and this fits flush. So now we have a nice situation where all the corners are where they need to be. This edge is where it needs to be, so I just have to do some edge swapping here, and we're done, right? Well, almost, and sort of. There's still some more tricks left with this. So I'm going to move this here and ask myself what belongs where. Well, this is this is the largest edge here, and this is the largest space. So I'm going to say that these two have to swap. I'm going to say that I'm going to do an opposite edge swap, not because I think this belongs here. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I suspect it doesn't, but I know this belongs here. As a matter of fact, I'm quite sure this belongs over here, because if this is out, then it means this must belong here, this must belong here, and this must belong here. Something like that. Anyway, so opposite edge swap. Now, understand what's going to happen. When I do any edge swapping, I'm going to end up with misplacement at these bottom layers here. Kind of like I'm going to do an adjacent edge, opposite edge swap. If I did that here, I go like 2R to U, 2R to U, 2R to U. You can see they've been swapped, but it caused placement issues over here, and we talked about how to deal with that. So got to bear that in mind. This is going to happen, and it's not going to look so clean like it did here, which means I don't want to move it from this position. So opposite edge swap, 2R, don't get lost, 2U, oh, the humanity, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U. Okay, so it worked. You can see this is in here, this is in here. Now I just have to swap these two, which will take this placement, back. So go ahead and move. Go ahead and swap these two. 2RU, 2RU, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, 2RU. 2R, UI, and 2R, getting all of these in. So here we have it, finally at the last layer. You see all of these seem to match. The corners, the edges, all are matched, but now we have a problem. What we can see is that the center is rotated wrong. This was not a problem here. We could get right up to this area. This could be rotated any way that we want and it wouldn't matter. But here, what makes this a super cuboid is the fact that this is rotated. So this is one of two possible configurations, either to be in right or to be rotated by 180 degrees. And this is where the super cuboid element comes, because now we're almost done, but this is rotated 180 degrees, so what do we do? Well, what we're going to have to do, and the good news is I'm not going to be adding any new algorithms. This is all going to be strategy. How are we going to rotate this by 180 degrees? And the answer is we're not. We're not going to rotate this by 180 degrees. We have to move all of these by 180 degrees. A little more cumbersome, but it is possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of an old familiar algorithm, which is first we're going to put in the edges. And we're going to use an opposite edge swap. Now what happens with an opposite edge swap, when you do 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, what happens is these two seem to stay the same and these two seem to swap. But now we're going to find out that that's not actually what happens with this algorithm. What happens with this algorithm is that this whole unit here rotates. So it's not really a swapping algorithm, but these as a unit simply rotate. So what happens is the center rotates and these two do what appears to be an opposite edge swap. So when you do that, an opposite edge swap, what you're doing is this collectively rotates. You can tell over here, see how this symbol is facing down, the letters are down, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U. Everything is fine, these seem to swap, but now the letters are facing up. So when this whole thing rotates, these two appear to have an adjacent edge swap, or an opposite edge swap. 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U. So that's actually what's happening when you do an opposite edge swap. You're just rotating everything. So by doing this, this center is going to rotate. These two are going to swap, and it's going to follow this center. These two are going to stay the same, so they're going to be lined up appropriately with the center as this rotates. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to do the same thing but at right angles. So let's do an opposite edge swap. 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U. And as you can see, this is now lined up and this is now lined up at this side. So by completely understanding the nuances of what these algorithms do, we can apply it more broadly. So now I'm just going to move this over here, do another opposite edge swap, which will in turn rotate this center to match these two. These two are going to rotate right with this and appear to swap. So we're going to do 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U. So in essence what that does is it puts all of the edges in. What about the corners? Now all of these have been returned back to their solid state, which is good. To get the corners in, what I'm going to have to do is take the ones from up here, move it down here, and then replace it up here in the proper place. So I'm going to start off, say, with this triangle. This triangle is supposed to go right next to this because this is the smallest outline here. Obviously it's not this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my swinging U technique to bring this down here. It's going to be replaced by this big triangle, but that's okay. It's only as a placeholder. So we're going to do 2R, swing it to the L position, 2L, swing it to the R position, 2R, swing it to the L position, and 2L, and then swing it back. So now we have this one over here. This came from the bottom, and we've got the small triangle positioned here on the left side. So I'm just going to position this to where it's supposed to be, and now I'm going to bring it to the proper place here. So 2L, you can see it's in. Swing it to the right. Got to line it up. Then 2R, swing it to the left, 2L, swing it to the right, 2R. So you can see this is now in, and now the other one that was here but in the wrong place is now down here. So I'm simply going to swing this to the place where this is supposed to be, and I think that's maybe, I don't know, here? We're about to find out. So now we do 2R. Nope, doesn't belong there. I think it's supposed to belong here actually, so, because this is the widest space here. 2R, no, not there either. How about here, the place where this is supposed to be? 2R and aha, there it is. Swing it to the left position. 2L, swing to the right position. 2R, swing it to the left, and 2L. So this is in and this is in. Come down here and you see that these two actually belong here, but they're swapped. But don't worry about that as of yet. So now what I'm going to do is the same thing. This belongs here and this belongs here. I just took these two out. So I'm going to do the same swinging arrow to move this down to here. When I do that, this will end up in the L position down here. So we do 2R, swing it to the left, 2L, swing it to the right, 2R, swing it to the left, and 2L. Okay? Now that that's the case, I'm now going to take this one, which is in this position, and bring it to where it's supposed to be right over here. It's supposed to be over here. You can tell because this is a large outline, this is a larger outline. So, 2L, you can see it fits. Swing it to the right. 2R, swing it to the left. 2L, swing it to the right. And 2R. The advantage of this technique is I don't get any placement parities on these middle two layers. If I can, swing it on over there. So, everything is in except this one, and if my calculations are correct, what's supposed to be here is sitting waiting for me in the right position. So I'm going to swing this over here, and now when all is done, it's going to be a 3 cycle, so to speak. This will come here, this will come here, and this will shift to here where it's supposed to be. That's actually what this swinging thing does, is it does what's called a 3 cycle, which is a total of 2 swaps, even number swaps. So 2R, you can see it's fine, swing it to the left, 2L, swing it to the right, 2R, swing it to the left, and 2L, and there it is. Just like magic, this is fine, and predictably we did nothing wrong here. So now, before taking a bow, we can turn this into its cubic position, turn this here, turn this here, and bang! There it is. Done. So your Heavens Cuboid 3x3x4 cuboid has been solved. All these tiny pieces placed so haphazardly in a scrambled position has been returned to its native position, and now we can put it back on its perch. And there it is. Heavens Cuboid, same technique, same algorithms, same strategy as this, just a little bit of perspective bending. But before we get too prideful about it, before we boast too much, in walks the Hell's Cuboid. Now this, you might think, well, it's the same kind of thing, and it sort of is, but there's a little bit of a catch. Instead of it being skewed like this guy is skewed like this. And you can tell how that's going to cause no end of issues, because what turns here, you've got this, but notice this isn't the center over here. This is equivalent to this turn, and this is equivalent to this turn. So in order to move it with these top positions over here, I've got to line this up in a way that it's hard for me even to predict. But once I get it lined up appropriately, say, I don't know, like this, I'm putting edges together here, now I can move it like this over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I can turn it like this. So this promises to be even more of a perspective bender, because now how am I going to put it in when I don't even have the top to bottom perspective? I have to literally solve it at the side. So this one promises to be a lot more challenging with a couple more tricks. But let's see how we can potentially work our way through this. And that's what we're going to come back to next time. So join with me next time as we try our hand at the Hell's Cuboid. Thanks for watching.